Good evening from me. Good morning to you, Wyn. How's it going?
It is going good. The sun is shining and it's Friday. What could be better?
Oh yeah, I guess yeah. It's hello from the future for you.
Indeed. I'm wanting to reply to the folks in the chat, but for some reason I can't connect with my account. So apologies, folks, if I'm not replying. I'm not being rude.
Yeah, if, I believe you should either directly in StreamYard or in the YouTube channel. So is it on the YouTube that you're not able to, or from StreamYard that you can't?
From StreamYard, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, once we get into what I'll do here in a couple minutes is I'll throw you just the YouTube link and you can chat there. But hello, Donald, and hello, Alex. Thanks for joining in your evening.
Indeed. Thanks for joining, folks.
Yeah, and I think there's you can't see mine because it's technically like up here on my wall, but we both have something new on our background since the last time you've been on, I believe. From the little YouTube award.
Yes, over there.
Yeah, so, there you go. Yeah,
yeah. It's always
not
nice.
A lot of people have that or have earned one of those. I think maybe like 10 or 12 people, I think, in the Power BI universe that I know directly. Yeah. Within there.
It's a nice little sort of achievement to go for, and yeah, happy when that arrived. So it's all good.
Yeah, this is your third time. I think it's your third time, probably.
Yeah,
been doing it since 2000, so I feel like usually about every 18, 24 months you're on for something.
Yeah, just so let's go with it. I'm alive, exactly. Yeah, moved rooms, so I got kicked out of one room in the house, moved into another room, set up a little wall. I got jealous of your lighting, Reed, so I went for a bit of lighting as well. So yeah,
it's nice to be able to have like some lights and stuff that are going across the canvas. Yeah,
and a better camera. So I sort of, but I find that just my YouTube videos now sort of are massive. The actual storage of them, because my camera's better. I'm not sure the quality of the videos is any better, and nobody really wants to look at me all the time anyway.
Are you actually recording in 4K or?
No, but even the HD stuff is compared to, my little webcam, which was pretty grainy. But
yeah, the only thing I ever one of the little tricks that I learned from Adam, I have yet to do it because my camera technically records at 4K, but the problem is after right around the 15-minute mark, it gets hot enough that it actually auto turns off because it just whatever little CPU chip. I don't think it's a DSLR. It's not meant for like long form video. It can do 1080 indefinitely, but 4K it overheats. But in theory, you have a little trick where recording 4K, and anytime you mess up, if you need to do a cut, a zooming in about 20% and then back, basically do a zoom in and zoom out each time. It helps with the jump cut to make it look more like a professional edit rather than just you have a error in your footage or anything. And at 4K, there's no loss of quality. You zoom in on a 1080, well then the zoom in effect looks a little bit more pixelated if you do that. Okay. So it was a clever all right, I do like that trick. If I need to repeat something, it's just it cuts to me, but me maybe just slightly more zoomed in. And then if I need to make another cut, I zoom back out.
There you go. Top tips for everybody.
Trick. Oh yeah, exactly. But what I like to do before we get started on any topics generally is always give it a bit of a chance for people to reintroduce themselves to the channel, or anybody watching later. If you want to give a bit of background about yourself and kind of what you do, where you are, things like that. And after that, we'll kick off to some fun demos and conversations.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a lowly ex-accountant. Once upon a time, I was an auditor where people hated me turning up, and then that wasn't any fun. So searched for, when I came to Australia, I just was on holiday and I searched for Excel financial modeling Perth, and this company called Access Analytic popped up, and they were magically hiring. I didn't realize that the advert had been up for many years and is still up, and we still recruit people on that same website ad. And joined the company as a sort of Excel financial modeling specialist, quickly turned into a management reporting specialist, and then got really good at VBA at a point where I was really confident. And at that point, Power BI came along, Power Query replaced all my VBA, Power BI replaced most of my. So these days, part of a company called Access Analytic. There's 13 of us in the company in Perth, Western Australia.
Nice.
We are basically a team of independent consultants, and we do Power BI, Fabric, Excel, financial modeling, and a budgeting and forecasting tool. And I'm a director of the company now. So yeah,
Very
spend
nice.
my week consulting. A lot of training as well.
I was going to say, do you, as a director, do you still do a lot of direct hands-on consulting work, or more of like company management, project management, like higher level stuff?
No, hands-on. Yeah,
Okay.
sort of.
Nice.
The original founder of the company. The company's been around 25 years now. I've been there for 19.
Okay.
Jeff Robson, who set the company up, he handles more of that sort of admin-y type side of things, but he's hands-on as well. He's building a big financial model for a client right now. So we're really flat structure. We hire capable analysts, you know, and so I guess for folks in the US who know, like Rob Colley's company, the sort of P3 adaptive type guys, from what I've heard, it sounds like we're quite similar in what we do, except we're all based in one spot, whereas his consultants are scattered around the US.
It was the last company I ever worked for before I went independent, like
there you go.
7-9 years ago. Yeah, I was with them for like 18 months, and they jumped me up a bit. I managed their blog.
You were strong in their blog, but I didn't actually realize you worked for them.
Yeah, well, I had never an employee of a full-time contractor, but yeah, Rob wanted to not blog as much when I was coming on, so I managed their blog for them while it was still like having regular posts, and then from there I kind of started segueing off to doing my own thing, you know, and from that. But yeah, good group of guys. I'm still in touch with a good handful of them. You know, even this day, like that's actually where I met Matt Allington, because he used to write for them way back when. You know, when he was first getting started in Power BI, he did a lot of guest posts for P3.
Yes, yeah. I learned a lot from all those posts and stuff. Is great. It's one of those. There weren't many resources back then, right?
Yeah, well, and then you know, Rob's tried and true greatest formula in the world, just the running total formula that he really liked. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, it's a good place.
You know, speaking of like just blogging, content, and everything else, I know we're going to be digging into some interesting topics today. Where do you want to start the conversation around that?
I think it's this sort of the evolution of Excel. It's been a bit sort of silent, and I'm still finding. I know I run a lot of Power BI training, and I always sneak some Excel stuff in there, because quite often the people attending courses are finance people or, you know, operational people who use Excel every day as well. And I just find that people just aren't aware of how Excel has changed under the hood over the last few years. It's just got so much crazy functionality now. So sort of hoping to sort of run through some examples, give some demos, you know, and just open up, you know, maybe a few people's eyes who are maybe not in Excel every day, just to go, okay, wow, didn't realize that was possible. This can be done now, and everything's really fundamentally changed under the hood.
Out of curiosity, will there like we talked about some of the stuff they'll be getting into, but like, are you going to show any plugins specifically, or any newer plugins for Excel?
There's two sort of things that I'd recommend people have. One is Excel Labs, which is a sort of Microsoft Garage Labs sort of invention, where it's great for formula editing, Python editing. Mine's not working quite right today. And also Lambda creation, which is, it's brilliant for that. And also then I'll show you what Claude, the Claude.
I was going to say like that's the one that I was hoping, like it's Claude's plugins for Office period have been amazing, but both the PowerPoint and the Excel ones, they're, I wish Copilot was that good.
Yeah, and I think from the people I've spoken to in my experience is that, you know, you put a prompt into Claude and it sort of does what you'd expect it or hope it to do. Whereas the Copilot experience, up until recently, it's the new, I want to call it agent mode, but they just renamed it last week to edit in Excel, edit with Copilot. That this is better now, but is always like takes 4 or 5 prompts and doesn't quite get it right first time and is more frustrating. But
Yep.
noticeable shift in the last, I would say, 4 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think there's often times where, you know, a product will ship a little earlier than it needs to sometimes in a Microsoft scale. It eventually gets there. It just might take 2 to 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, but my question with that approach with something like Copilot is how many chances are you willing to give it as a, let's say, a business user in terms of adoption, right? If it lets you down twice, 3 times, 4 times, are you going to go back for a 5th go? Or are you just going to go, it's not fit for purpose, and then maybe it'll be 2 years before you see somebody else do something quite cool with it, and you think, oh, I'll give that another go now. So going out too early.
I think that's a big part of it is like, you know, and probably why, you know, most of the posts that I've seen on LinkedIn and others is usually with like LLM plugins, just, you know, Cloud Code specifically, is a ton of people are like, this is really cool. And, you know, there's like this pattern that I need to do 45 times, you know, and repeat across these. Like I did it once. I said, here's what I need to do. Please go do it here. And I come back in like 20 minutes and it's done and it like worked. But I don't see nearly as many of those. And like I asked Copilot at Excel to do this. I'm sure it probably, as you said, it, you know, might be more capable of doing that now. But if you hop ship to another tool and the other tool works, why put half a day into learning a new tool again? So it's like, it might be 5% better. Maybe it's going to save me $10 a month on a subscription or something. But you know, if it's not broken enough for me to justify like the X number of hours to dedicate to learning it, then I'll stick with this for a while until somebody shows me something so cool that it finally convinces me to then come back to it. To your point.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's going to be there's a huge barrier to entry to these third-party ones, right? Because people aren't allowed to install anything in a company. You know, everything's locked down, so you can't actually install Claude code the Claude add-in even if you wanted to.
Yep.
So you are stuck with Copilot, and you know there is that sort of reality that while we as sort of independent consultants can install whatever we want on our laptops, the real world is most companies aren't going to do that. And also just that sort of awareness of security, that I think that is sort of, again, Copilot's selling point, is it's seen as secure and your data isn't going outside anywhere. Whereas with Claude, you're just like, what am I accepting here when I click all these when I click all these buttons? Do I really care? But I'm playing with dummy data and demo data, right? So I'm not using it for client projects and things. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, speaking of plugins and tools, and maybe showing something on the screen, if you're ready, I can flip over to the desktop and we can get started.
Yeah, and I'll go through a little bit of a history of where things have changed and stuff. So yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, wyn.bio.link. I've also got a little training course talking about this Excel stuff coming out soon. I'll put a little pre-register link at the end. That'll be my little marketing pitch at the end. But I'm just going to go straight into a list of all the functions, right? I'm not going to sort of go through these individually. I just want to show you the volume of what's changed. You know, we're talking all these sorts of functions have been added in the last couple of years, and it just opens up a whole bunch of what Excel can do. So it's pretty crazy. And a lot of these functions, the beauty of them is they just make life simpler, and people aren't aware of them, so they're still doing stuff the hard way. But conceptually, the underlying code base of the way the sort of formula engine and everything works in Excel has changed, because we've now got this concept of dynamic array Excel. So, you know, one formula, if I just delete this, okay, that's one formula is creating that. Now I've added in some conditional formatting, but this is just one formula, okay? Bit of a long-winded formula, but there's nothing in these cells. I'm clicking in these cells here. There's nothing actually in them. Okay, the only formula exists in this top left cell, and the whole thing is spilling. It's called spilling dynamically. All right, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's talk about this concept of spilling. So for example, if I just highlight a few cells, in the old days, if you pressed enter now, you would just get the answer of 17.25 because it sort of works out the implicit cross-section of what you're referring to. But now when I click it, you get this blue highlighting, and this is now a spilling array. Okay, in the top left corner, we get this sort of dark, black font. But in these cells, if I click on them, there's nothing there. And the formula is light gray, which means it's the result of a spilling array, okay? And if I type something in the way, you now get a spill error. So this whole thing of like spreadsheets updating dynamically, one of the biggest risks back in the day was like dragging formulas down, which is, why pivot tables were lovely and Power BI, tables are just, you update the data and all your charts update. You don't have to forget to drag a formula down. Well, those days should be relatively over with building Excel solutions as well now. And you can even sort of click on this and say, okay, select the obstructing cells. It goes to the cell, you delete it. And then if I just press delete, the formula comes back and everything's magically fixed again. So then what you can do with these then is refer to these automatically spilling arrays by using a hash reference. So if I zoom in a little bit more so everybody can see a bit easier. Okay, so if I click on that and press enter, it just gives me 17.25. But if I put a little hash on the end, you notice how it refers to the whole array. And again, that will spill. Okay. So you can now sort of just reference and make your whole spreadsheet quite dynamic so that if new stuff is added, this all updates without you having to do anything. So that's really the sort of the concept of spilling. It really can make things a lot more robust, which is a bit of an eye opener to a lot of people.
I do like just anything that allows for just better. I don't know if I'd call it error handling, but just layout issues and other stuff that can cause from like spill errors like that. Yeah. When did they add the spill? How recent is that?
It's about 5 or 6 years ago. So it was basically when XLOOKUP came out.
That was a big. Everybody was talking about XLOOKUP when that came out. That was the equivalent of like variables in DAX. Like I just remember that was the big thing, and like there was so many blog posts about XLOOKUP.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because it sort of. I used to teach VLOOKUP and say it's not that great. It can't look in all directions and is quite brittle. It breaks quite easily. So index match was a better solution. And I used to use, I don't know if I've still got this trick anymore. I used to use this trick. Oh yeah, it still works. So I use autocorrect. I pre-build a whole bunch of formulas. I'll show you one later. And I put them in my autocorrect. When your spelling correction happens, you spell the wrong, TEH, and it autocorrects it to the. That happens for everybody. Okay, but I've actually put those like a little formula inside my autocorrect. So whenever I type I, it used to build this. And I used to teach this. And I used to say, okay, you double click on the lookup cell, you double click on the lookup column, you double click on the result column and go and select those three things. But it was just like, because people didn't remember index match and which way round it works. So XLOOKUP is just a simpler version of that with a built-in if not found. So yeah, it was lovely. But it relied on this concept of dynamic arrays, because that's the way it works under the hood. So when XLOOKUP came out, that's when dynamic arrays came out, and a couple of other little functions like these two came out at the same time. And over the last 5 years, they've then added more and more and more that work off this concept of dynamic arrays. So the sequence function, not particularly useful on its own. I can do 10 rows and 2 columns. Just a dynamic formula, right? Again, in isolation, not particularly useful, but coupled with other things, it can do really cool stuff. Or the rand array, again, pretty random. I want 100 rows and 1 column starting at 10, going to 1,000. And I'd like whole numbers. Okay, so there's just a random array of numbers, which again can be useful for demos and other things. Okay, so you got this.
I was going to say one of my favorite things that just reminds me of like just to your point for demos, like Marco's trick on using random in a and a calculation group to basically randomize a page instantly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just picking through
Yeah.
whichever one. Yeah, yeah. You can do stuff like, top 10 or do, various draws and stuff. Okay, so we start with this sort of concept of this spilling formula, which is a complete game changer, right? And literally that phrase gets bandied around a lot, but dynamic array Excel is a game changer of what's possible, because then you can just make life, a lot easier. Let's say I want to get a unique list of all these vendors. So I can go use the unique function. I think this was available in Excel 2019. All these features are Excel 365, but 2019, the latest Excel and Office version is, I think, Office 2024, and they've got some of the latest ones in. But you've got to go 365 these days. You can't be buying box sets anymore. You've got to subscribe to the channel. It just doesn't make sense. So we go unique, highlight that little column, and there's my nice little unique list. Netflix appears twice, but it only appears once in this list. So you can have things like that. There's a function called sort. So I can click on this and press the hash, the hash sign or pound sign, sort. So now it's sorted.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. I'm assuming that will work with any data type. It'll sort dates, numbers, text. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, those sorts of things that you might have to do manually, copy, paste, remove duplicates, then manually sort. This is all dynamic, right? So if I come in here and we were talking earlier about names of companies and things, let's say I changed Netflix to AA, Solutions. There we go. It's just instant live updating, auto sorting. So again, your spreadsheet just becomes that little bit more dynamic and safe, much less physical interaction with it, which is a good thing, right? The less people are manually doing stuff and not highlighting the right bits and pieces, the better. So, yeah. And
so
then
I've always wondered maybe you'll know the answer to this or not, but from the Power BI, so whenever I do regular trainings on teaching, Excel to the Power BI world, I technically we do have the if error function that is built in to DAX, which is the somewhat of an equivalent of divide. But I have always wondered just why they've never backwards migrated the divide function, which is one of those from day one, that was this is unique to to DAX. There's no more if errors. You have a prettier looking divide function. I've always just wondered because it's such an easy, very simple function. I feel like that could have easily been added to the Excel library, but it was for some reason they never did.
Yeah, it would be an absolute joy. So that's why I built my own AA divide function. So we've got
nice.
numerator, comma, denominator. I can't click on it because it's in the way. And I just get a double dash for me rather than the div error. So I'll show you how I built that using a lambda later on.
Oh, that's okay. So is the equivalent of a DAX UDF essentially, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm learning because I dabble in Excel as far as analyzing Excel goes, but because 98% of my stuff is really just Power BI and Fabric these days, I don't get a lot of time to look at new shiny things that are coming out to Excel. So that's cool that they have an equivalent of a UDF. That's really nice.
Yeah, and this was another sort of step change in what was possible in terms of naming functions and doing a whole lot more with them. So yeah, I'll talk about those little ones later. And then one last little one on here, the stacking functions are quite nice in terms of now combining data. So I want to stack this list on top of this list. So you can do a vertical stack, which is like an append, or a horizontal stack, which isn't really like a merge. It just stacks the columns side by side. So if you do a V stack, so vertical stack of that table, okay, comma, with this table, and press enter, I've now got a stacked list. Qantas is at the bottom there. Dan Murphy's is at the bottom of that list. And the list is just stacked. And if I wanted to, I could wrap the whole thing in a unique, just in case there are any duplicates. Put a little bracket at the end. And I could wrap that whole thing in a sort. So you can see how you can sort of, the formulas can get a little bit awful. But, you can just build up the logic in separate cells. And then if you want to combine them at the end. I'm a big fan of helper columns. Some people like the mega formulas, but I like the logic of separate columns if they're not taking up too much space. So yeah, pretty cool. So we sort of go from that sort of starting point to then take things a little bit more advanced. Okay. The filter function, absolutely love it. You know, DAX, okay, is all about summing and, you know, doing calculations on filtered tables, essentially. So we really sort of can get into the bit of the same sort of logic, but I can do a filter function just to start off here. So I want to filter this entire table, okay, where let's say the amount is greater than $100. Okay, and then this is my filtered table. Okay, and annoyingly, the one weakness of dynamic arrays is that formats don't spill. So even if I change this to a short date, okay, if I change this function to say, okay, give it everything greater than $10, right? So that's still some, once they've got that fixed, I don't know if there's any plans to do that. We always nag them about doing that. Once that's done, then really it becomes just incredibly powerful. The only solution currently is just to pre-format this whole column or all the area it might go to before the spill happens.
Yeah, but that's essentially what I remember doing is like you would basically select at the column level and just apply like formatting to future-proof every single row up until row 1 million, right?
Yeah, which can make your file a bit bloated and stuff. They've optimized stuff better these days, so it's not as bad as it used to be. But it's, you know, but that is sort of an approach. But from here, I could say, right, well, I don't want all these columns. So I can use the choose cols. I'm only going to choose a particular cols, okay, from that little array, from that filtered table. And the first column I want is just column number 2 and column number 4. I'm not a big fan of hard coding in column references, so there are ways around that. But now I just get those two. So it's pretty cool. Okay. All right. So you can now sort of do all sorts, you can sum that and do all sorts with it. So it's an interesting way of sort of starting to be able to do dynamic, you know, subsets of data and things like this. Okay. So then a lovely little demo feature, stocks. Okay, this has been around for ages, but people aren't aware of it. And it's great for demos. I've never really used it practically in real life, but it's one of those cool features, a bit like Q&A used to be for, you know, Power BI and all those other sort of, you know, Gartner type, you know, fancy things. But if I put Microsoft in here, right, let's find Microsoft's share price. And we're going to compare it to Apple's share price in a second. Under the data menu, there's this stocks button. You've got to be online and connected to do this. So you go stocks, and then sometimes it asks you, you know, to pick from which, you know, exchange you want to pick something from. I've done this before, so it's sort of remembered a little bit. And then in this little card, sometimes there's a photo, but you've got all the elements. I don't know if people, I can't really zoom in on here, but I could just grab the price. Okay, I can just click on this and go, okay, give me the price. There we go. So that's right now. That's the market price, share price of Microsoft. Okay. But then you've got stock history, which is a lovely function. So I'm going to take the Microsoft stock price. I'm going to start 700 days ago and end it as of today, 13th of March in Australia. Okay. And now you get a dynamic array showing daily share prices for the last 700 days, just in one formula, which is pretty cool.
That's
cool.
Then
I can right click and go quick analysis, charts, line chart. And in like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, I've got a nice little line chart showing where, you know, and it's flexible because I've made this start date and end date dynamic. So last 100 days. I've stuffed that because I put 0 in. Let me try again. So I got 200 days. Let me go quick analysis, charts, line chart, never put 0. So that's the last 200 days or the last 100 days or the last 10 days. You know, it's pretty cool. Then I can do, okay, let's do Apple. Let's see where they've gone. And I'm just going to move this back to the last, well, let's say 600 or 600 days, say. Oh, let's go. That'll do. All right. So let's go Apple and data and stocks. Oh, let's change this to 300. It shouldn't be freaking out, so I'm not sure why. It just has a little fit now and again. Okay. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Equals stock history, Apple stock. Okay. Starting in that cell, ending with that date. Okay. Right click. I'll go quick analysis, charts, line chart. Okay, and there's apples. Okay, but I'd like to combine the two into one chart. So here we go. All right. So I'm going to take the Microsoft results. Okay, so let me just move this out of the way. I'll actually delete these two to make it easier for the demo. All right, so I am going to refer to the Microsoft results. So that cell hash. So I'm just getting a duplicate of that. Then I'm going to horizontally stack it, stack it, okay, with the Apple results. So this cell. So there's the side by side. But then I've got the date column twice, which I don't want, okay? So I only want the second column from Apple. So I'm going to go choose cols from the Apple results, L17 hash, and just give me the second column. So now I've got rid of the Apple date. So I've got those two. Then those titles for my chart, don't want those. Okay, so I'm going to drop those. So I'm just chucking in a whole bunch of new functions in here to show people they exist. You can drop the first X number of rows or the last X number of rows. So drop, and the same thing with columns. I want to drop the first row. If you wanted to drop the last row, -1. First row, +1. First 2 rows, 2. First 3 rows, 3. Okay. How many you drop off the list? So drop the first one.
Yeah. Okay.
So my headings are gone. And then I want to stack. This is my new heading. These are just cells referring to the other things. So I want to vertically stack to turn this into one big array. Vertically stack that little range there, which is P9 hash. With that one, put a bracket on the end. And my whole sheet is now dynamic. So there's no hard coding going on anywhere. So now if I turn this into a little chart, okay, there's my, Apple versus Microsoft chart. And I can come over here and I can sort of swap out, right, let's go NVIDIA. Okay, this little menu's popped out because it's asking me which stock exchange do I want to reference? The Deutsche Börse, the Korea Stock Exchange. I'll go for the NASDAQ. And now we can see Apple versus, the blue is NVIDIA. If I go back, let me see if it'll let me do 1,000 days. It did yesterday. Yeah, weird.
255. Okay.
But, oh, there you go. Weird glitch. So yeah, here was 1,000 days ago. So 2023, NVIDIA's stock price. And then you see it just going. So yeah, but all dynamic. I don't have to change any, just change these two things and everything else just takes care of itself. The labeling, the naming. It's pretty cool. Okay.
I like the fact that it's just like the ability to integrate with public data is really nice.
Yeah. There's a few options under here. Okay. You've got currencies, so you can do exchange rates and stuff like this. You've got stocks. You've got geography, which is basically based on Wikipedia results like population, location, all this sort of stuff. But the source for geography is Wikipedia, which can just be wrong. So, but the stock data is based on, if I click on this, it says down here, it's very small, but it says powered by Refinitiv, which is a third-party company that does stocks and shares and analysis and stuff. So this is actually sort of more trustworthy. But the geography one's a bit dodgy. Okay. So then we've got funky stuff in terms of like pivot tables and things that people are used to. But now we can have formulas that can replicate pivot tables. So let me go and delete those charts because there's something quirky going on. around that. No idea what, that's never happened before, but that's Excel for you. So the old way, okay, if I did a unique of all the keywords, okay. Okay, what's happening in here? Have I got another chart somewhere? I'm just going to delete these because something's freaking out somewhere. Okay. So let me do a, so let's go group by, oh, expense, sorry, type. So I'm just going to do this. So let me go the unique expense types. All right. And then I just wanted to do a total for each one. So equals sum ifs. And I'll add up the amount column where the expense type matches this hash. Okay. That then spills down. So it's basically looking up entertainment, looking up groceries, et cetera, et cetera. So two separate formulas, took a while to write. So then they added the group by function, which does the same thing, but with one formula. So group by, expense type, comma, and let me just, I'll zoom in a little bit so people can see this a bit better. Okay, and come across here. Okay, equals group by expense type, comma, what the values are in the amount column, comma, and then it gives you this list of sum, percentage, median, average, max, min. So I just want to sum them. Mm-hmm. One formula now, nice dynamic, already sorted, lovely. Grand total in there, that's optional. You can turn that off. But again, fully dynamic. And if you want something more like a pivot table with something going across and down, there is a pivot by function. So I can pivot by expense type. Okay. The column fields I'll put as maybe, I'll do it by vendor. Okay. And let's go up here. Comma. The actual amount is going to be the dollars, and I'll do a sum again, press enter. And now I've got one formula that's building me a two-dimensional matrix sort of result.
That's cool.
Interestingly, Amazon and Amazon are in there twice because of a little cheeky space at the start of that Amazon.
Yeah.
Which I could fix up in the formula, or I could go back and fix up my source data or whatever. But yeah, that's why they're there separately. And if I did fix them up, you know, you notice that this is now instantly updated without having to do any refresh or anything. And that's
really nice.
The beauty of those sorts of formulas and things. So it really does sort of give you so many options now in terms of making your reporting and spreadsheets dynamic. It's pretty cool. All right. What they've also added recently, but even more recently taken away because it was causing some bugs in the beta version, is pivot table auto refresh. So I can't actually demo it. So essentially, you know, this pivot by function updates as soon as you change the data. The annoyance people have had in the past with pivot tables is that once you updated some data, you had to right click and refresh your pivot table manually. Yeah. But they, in the beta version of Excel, they had this button. Let me just show you. Auto refresh. So you could turn that on for a pivot table, and then the pivot table would automatically update as the data changed every time the data changed, which opens up again some interesting opportunities to analyze your data with, you know, instant access and instant sort of response when stuff updates. So I can't demo that. But what I can demo is one other feature that sort of really annoyed people. If I go in here and create a little pivot table off this, so summarize with pivot table in an existing worksheet, just here, click OK. All right, let's say I go and put, let's say, keyword in the rows. That'll do. And let's go amount in the values. Okay, great. Right, that's all working fine. But then if I put something here, sort of in the way, if this pivot table were to get bigger, like there was more data added, and I refreshed it, you'd get this horrible warning of there's like some pivot table error, but it wouldn't really tell you where the error was or what was going on. But what happens now is, let's say I add in expense type in here, I now get a spill error instead. I don't get the one of your pivot tables is blocking another one. I get a nice spill error, and I can go select obstructing cells, move it out the way, and there's my pivot table automatically reappears, which is nice. One of the little bugbears of pivot tables. So yeah, all pretty cool.
How many how many keyboard shortcuts or hotkeys do you it has been burned into your brain at this point? I just out of curiosity.
I'd say not that many. I'm still quite a fan of the, sort of quick access toolbar up here with various options and stuff. I wish Power BI, had a little quick access toolbar for accessing your most common formatting features.
We used to have one. The original version of Power BI had one for the first year or two, and they got rid of it for some reason, and it was a very sad day.
Yeah. I see in the comments that Donald was saying he's wondered why the sort of pivot table auto refresh wasn't working. Yeah, they enabled it, then they turned it off about, I want to say 2 weeks ago, because in testing in the beta channel, they found that it was causing some unintended consequences. So
that's not good.
Going to go back and switch off. I guess that's the beauty of the beta channel. In the Office 365, you have these channels: insider, beta, current channel, semi-annual, when your updates flow through.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess Power BI, you can just toggle them on and off, which is a nice capability. But then you start using all those preview features in production, which can be good. Everybody who gambled on what was it? The field parameters. Everyone was using those for probably a couple of years before they got turned into GA. So yeah, all good.
Oh, that was one of those things that was being used immediately just because of how useful they were.
Yeah, but imagine them turning them up, going, there's some bug, and we have to turn them back off. We'd be like, oh. So
yeah, that's fair.
Cool. All right, let's get a bit more advanced then in terms of coding and stuff like this. So the let function, Alex mentioned in the chat that he loves the let function. So the let is the equivalent of var in DAX.
Okay.
Again, why Microsoft can't keep terminology consistent across products? It's not their strength, is it? Naming stuff. So the let function in Excel, you might have, reused a bit of a formula multiple times within one function. Well, now you can just label it, and it just evaluates it once like a var, and then reuse that named variable within the formula. And again, like var in DAX, let, the parameters inside a let are only available to that formula. They're not available to any other formulas.
Okay.
So for example, right, I've got 3 products, A, B, and C. And here they are. Here's a little table listing up the prices. And I want to say, look, if any product is over $100, flag it as investigate. Otherwise, return me the actual value of 85. So that's the formula I want to do. Okay. So the old way, X lookup. Here we go. Lovely little X lookup. So we're going to X lookup code A, comma, in this column, comma, and bring back this result. Way nicer than a VLOOKUP where you have to count how many columns there are and hard code a 2 or a 3 and just click the columns you want. Perfect. Okay, close the bracket, enter. Lovely. Right, step 1. Then what you'd have to do is go, okay, copy this formula and say, if that formula is greater than 100, return the word investigate. Otherwise, return the formula or the result of the formula. Okay, so old school way, you'd have to go if. Okay. And then I'm going to go Alt-Enter, Shift-Enter in DAX, Alt-Enter in Excel. Again, why? If that is greater than 100, shouldn't really hard code the 100 in, but just for demo purposes, then put the word investigate. Okay. Otherwise, Alt-Enter, return the result, Alt-Enter, close the bracket. All right. So that's the long-winded formula. But look, you've got this exactly the same thing twice in here. which not only makes the formula harder to read, also potentially has to evaluate twice, can slow down your formula if you're doing this on a 50,000 row table. You up how many times it has to sort of evaluate it. So that's where let comes in. So here we go. Okay, we can go let, open a bracket. Okay, so let's name our variable, like in var. So we go underscore. I like an underscore. It just makes it easier to reference later on. Do you use underscores for your variables in vars or not? If you're writing it back?
So I used to, but I've found most of the time that camel case works pretty well. The only time I've ever done that is if I needed to split up like a parent and a child. So like if there's enough variables that there's like 3 types that all start with something that, you know, it's a separator for a parent child. But if it's only like 2 to 3 words, most of the time with a variable, I'll just do a title case with the letters, and like the title letter is enough for me to read it easily. Cool.
Yeah. No right or wrong. Just whatever works.
But it's always like the reason I explain is it's I think it's good to know the whys, right? Of like, you know, because it's a personal preference thing. It's the same with some people prefer fact and dim in their titles, some people don't. You know, so there's always a good reason, I think, behind some of that, and it gives you food for thought.
Yeah, yeah. So for me here, I'll go like sort of let's call it price. Okay, and then the price is really this X lookup bit. So copy that bit of the code, paste it here. Okay, and then rather than referencing X lookup, I can go here and say, right, reference price, and here. So really that's the concept. And because I've got a let here, I have to put another close bracket on the end. But that's really, you know, this gets evaluated once at the start, and then it just gets tested here. And you can have as many, you know, elements as you want. The real reason I go for underscore, the only reason I do it, is when I want to refer to variables, I can just do underscore, or it's very small. But down here it says underscore price, because that's the only variable beginning with underscore. Whereas if you start it with something like P, all your formulas functions begin with P show up. So that's the only reason I use underscore. It just makes referencing them. It just makes referencing them later simpler. So same formula, no difference results, but just a bit easier to read, and also your formula will be a bit quicker. So yeah, let is the equivalent of var.
I like that. I like the good to be able to have it. I'm sure you're like, how have you, you know, in terms of using that, have you have you used it much for like significant performance gains or anything else from like a variables perspective, or just for the friendly name perspective, out of curiosity?
More from the simplicity of coding it and referring to it for longer functions and things. Yep. When we get on to lambdas, which we'll talk about next, pretty essential, because your lambda function can get, you know, quite long, like a page. So then you'd really want to sort of name your variables throughout there. Same as sort of, you know, any longer coding. Performance-wise, I've heard people having, you know, significant gains from doing it when they've got really complicated nested functions and stuff being reused over and over again. Personally, I've not experienced it, but to be honest, these days, most of my client work is Power BI. So I'm not having the real life experience in the Excel solutions as much these days. So, yeah.
I feel like with a lot of these, and maybe you just, if you have a quick anecdote on this, I feel like a lot of what I've seen is the people left still using Excel. The average Excel report that I see still used today is becoming more and more and more bespoke. Like the only ones that are left are those ones that are so customized that it has to be in Excel, versus the things that are simple enough to migrate have been migrated. It's only the stuff that can't be migrated is the ones that left. So to the point of like, it's almost hard to be a developer a little bit as like an external consultant building stuff in Excel versus just helping people with it, because there's that one person who like, this is their magic box. And if they leave the company, nobody else can figure out how that magic box works, but it does help the company run.
Yeah. And I've certainly worked, you know, before like I said, I've been with Access Analytic for 19 years now, but before that I was working for a couple of the banks in the UK. and accounting firm and stuff like this. And I shudder at the mess I would have left whoever took over my roles, just undocumented code and, badly structured things. And I was good. I was good at Excel. Right? I was the Excel guy, and I did an all right job, but it's only when I joined a professional, consulting firm that was delivering stuff to clients that had to work every time and other people might need to pick up, that I started to learn the discipline of, okay, that's not all right to leave that for you to fix up next month because you know how to fix it. I think the same thing goes with Power BI as well. There's people building awful Power BI solutions that when they leave, with 100 bookmarks, undocumented, and then they leave and everyone's like, well, how does this work? And the code's not documented, or data flows that are, only they had access to. And helping a lot of people like that these days people have set stuff up and then just moved on and nobody knows how to maintain it. So
at least with like the only thing that I would say is a pure black box, but thankfully, just as I meant, and you'll get to Claude and I'm sure all these other ones, but the one thing that is good about auditing with a tool is it, for things that have been built by somebody else, it can at least look at like all of the moving parts that might take you 6 hours. Like, all right, I think X to Z to Y to A to B to back to X to C again to this. This is my best guess from like, Claude speaking is, this is what I think the developer is trying to do. So it can help you sometimes, identify a chain, in a model that otherwise would just take you hours to look at. So like, I do like that the black box is a little less black, maybe more gray to a degree, for it to find those weird patterns of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Right. And then just sort of like last sort of few things pretty quickly. So LAMBDAs, I won't sort of dwell on it too long because it's a big topic in itself, but you can now sort of name formulas. So if I put in the formula called nerdy that I built, okay, I get a lovely picture of me. If I type in nerdier, I get a lovely picture of you. Okay. So you can build functions that can do all sorts. All right. So let me go and show you a couple that I've built, and I'll show you how I built them then. So equals AA, compare two lists, highlight this list, comma, highlight that list, press enter. And it now builds me a little formula that says, hey, apple and banana are in list 1 only. Apple and banana, not in list 2. Strawberry is in list 2 only. So again, just one formula that's pre-built, that's simple to write, but under the hood, there's a bunch of lets and other things going on that help me do that, lists and H stacks and other things. And I'll show you how those exist in the future in a minute. Equals AA list duplicate column. Okay, so here's my duplicates, enter. Apples and pears are the duplicates. There's apple and apple, there's pear and pear. And if I add banana in here, it just puts banana in as well. So you can just start to build your own functions. And one of my craziest ones that I probably would never use in real life, but it was just a challenge, equals AA unpivot. So equals AA unpivot. And I can highlight this data and press enter. And it's just unpivoted it for me into just like Power Query would. And I've got, in this unpivot one, I've got optional parameters. Okay, how many static columns are there on the left? So how many columns do you want to keep on the left and then unpivot other, essentially? Does it have headers? Do you want to remove blanks? What do you want to call the header? What do you want to call the value column? So I can put in some of these optional parameters like, let's not remove the blanks. So false, defaults are true. I want to call the new heading month, and I want to call the other one units. So you can pass in optional parameters, and there you can see January, which is 0 because it's blank. Okay, but I'm now keeping the blanks. All right. So lambdas. These are all called lambdas, named functions. Okay. How do you build them? Well, that's where you need Excel Labs. Okay. So you need this add-in. You go to add-ins and search for Excel Labs. Okay. And let me just bring up that little menu here. So Excel Labs. And it's consists of 3 things these days. The advanced formula environment, which is quite nice for editing complicated formulas, which we'll have a look at in a second. Generative AI, not so useful. Python editor might have a quick look at that, but it's not working for me. But yeah, advanced formula edit environment. So open this, and you now got this much nicer than the horrible sort of formula bar up here. You've got this nice big expandable grid for writing Excel formulas. And you've also got this thing called modules. And if I Control Shift plus in, so these are all my lambdas. So here's my first lambda, AA compare two lists. And you basically just write in here equals lambda. That's how you start it. And then you say, what's the parameters that I'm passing in?
Yeah.
And then you write whatever function you want. So let me just, I've got a few, all my ones I just used are all
very cool
in here. I'll just do a really quick one. Okay. So I'm actually going to copy paste this to save on time. All right. So I'm going to create a little lambda in Excel called read demo. I'm going to pass it A and B, and then it's going to calculate A plus B plus the word reads. Okay, how many reads do we have? Okay, so there we go. I just save it, and as soon as I click save, it's now available in the grid. So equals AA should be, oh no, sorry, read demo equals read. There we go. There's the function available, and it's asking, it's very small, but it's asking for A and B. Okay, so I can click on, I don't know, the 26, and I can click on the 89, close the bracket, press enter, and now it's saying there's 115 reads because A plus B and reads.
Yep.
Okay, so you can just start developing this stuff. And then let me just do a slightly different version.
Is Excel Labs like, is that similar to like PowerToys or others where it's like a community type tool that's an extension of this? Or is it made by the Direct Excel team or like a Excel lovers that's somewhere else in the company?
Yeah, the Microsoft Garage community or whatever it is. It's like Microsoft's sort of people playing around with stuff. I can't remember the full name. Somebody, Donald or somebody might know in the chat, or Alex. It's called Microsoft Garage something. But yeah, but then you can also put in optional parameters by putting square brackets. And I won't go into the detail, but you have to handle if somebody doesn't put the optional in. So you have to do if somebody leaves out the optional. And then you can, you know, A plus B times the optional C, for example. So you can build up all these functions. Now, if somebody else has built, well, where these live, okay, formula, name manager, all these lambdas actually exist in this file. If I can zoom in, which it won't let me do. Okay, Alt Z. Oh, there we go. I'm back. So if I go name manager, all these lambdas are actually stored inside the Excel workbook. And I can copy and paste those formulas into another workbook and they'll work. Okay, so when you copy paste a lambda, it just copy pastes the formula. So they're all in the name manager, but this box here, you do not want to be writing your formulas in there. You can, but it's a horrid experience. And that's why Excel Labs is lovely for doing that. Also, you can download somebody else's or your own list of lambdas from GitHub. Okay, so I've got my own gist up here. Let's click on this, should open up. Okay, here we go. And here's my lambdas. Okay, my various, there's my AA compare to list. There's my AA list duplicate columns, just a bit of, you know, description at the start. And there's my lambda and how I've built it. So all you have to do really is copy that gist, go download. Okay, I'm going to add it to a new module called read, put the link in, import, and now all those functions are now available in any workbook.
Is there a similar to DAX? No, it's not DAX guide. It's whatever the UDF repository is. Is there an equivalent of like with these ones of like community lambdas?
There, I don't know the URL, but there are like there's not a centralized spot, but there's people have posted their own in all sorts of places. And now I can just go equals read, and then all my read, because I put it in the read module, it's read dot everything. Okay, read dot Unpivot and so on. Yeah, it's cool. All right, last little thing. Let me just run through this. Agent mode. Okay, let's talk a little bit about agent mode. And I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do this in a separate file so I can carry on with the demo while this is running. Otherwise, it just frees up on me. So agent mode side demo. Okay. So home Copilot. All right. Renamed last week, not called agent mode anymore. It's called Let's Edit. So edit mode, edit with Copilot is what it's called. So I'm going to go and get this little prompt from my other file. Okay, create an input table for Reed Havens to track his activities, make it a table, add drop-down lists, put those drop-down lists on another page, avoid use of indirect because that it uses that sometimes. Here's the whole prompt in one. So I'm just going to go over here, paste this in and run it. Okay, and I'm going to leave that to run. Okay, while that is running, I'm going to show you the same thing that Claude Code produced, or Claude basically. Add-ins, Claude, okay. Same idea, paste the same thing in the interest of time, because it does take 4 or 5 minutes sometimes. I'm not going to run it, but it created this without me doing anything else. Same prompt. Okay, so you've got drop downs, you've got, it's added conditional formatting, which changes based on the priority. It's added the calculations. It's changed giving the drop downs for this. All these drop downs have been put onto a separate sheet, which is what I like. So they can all be maintained here. And it did that with just the one prompt, and it nailed it first time. I didn't do anything extra. It's pretty cool. And it took
like the just the efficiency jumps to be able to kind of throw a few of these together with, I mean, not quite hotkeys, but just functions and references is really cool. So like it allows for a lot of short circuiting. I like it. Yeah.
So, you know, that's pretty awesome. And then let me just check how the other one's getting on. Okay. It's given it a go. It's saying it's done it. Okay. Drop down sheet. Okay, so it's claiming to have done some of this stuff. Client type. So this is what I found it's done, right? The first time I ever tried this worked beautifully. I'm clicking on this, there's nothing in the drop down. I'm clicking on priority, there's nothing in the drop down. I'm clicking on this, okay. The drop downs are there, but it's just not working. And the reason, and it keeps doing this now, I've sort of checked the other day when I tried to recreate this, because through a week ago, it did this quite well. And then the last couple of times it just failed. And that's the issue. Under here, okay, it's referring to this little list. But what I found is it just did an error under name manager. Don't know if people can see this. Let me try and zoom in a bit. It's put double quotes around cell referencing, which doesn't work. So anybody who doesn't know how to do this will never find that issue. And therefore, they just spent 5 minutes and a bunch of, you know, usage of this sort of service for no good reason whatsoever. And that's my issue, is that it just makes silly little mistakes, whereas Claude just nailed it.
Yeah.
Within Edit with Copilot, you have auto mode, but you have 5.2, or you can pick Anthropic 4.5.
Is that included by default, or are they just interesting?
By default. So
I wonder if I wonder if they're just trying to increase the usage of Copilots. So like, we know everybody pretty much uses Claude over GPT or others. So just including it as the default, I guess.
Well, this brings it, you know, it just in local news, not local news, US news, you know, the Pentagon has said that Anthropic are potentially a major risk. So any company working with them can't have any systems, whereas Microsoft have embedded this into Excel. And I'm sure there's a lot of government agencies using Excel. So that's why Microsoft is joining the law against the Pentagon. So it's interesting.
Yep.
And then just to finish off, okay, just one last little thing. For those of you into Python, okay, you can now do Python formulas. So this is a Python data frame. Weirdly, it's sort of going a little bit slow. Let's just go Control Enter. So equals pi, and you can start writing Python code. So for example, I can bring in to a data frame this range where headers are true. Okay, then I can reference the data frame. So df, as long as you reference to your formulas to the right or below the df cell reference, it knows that that's the data frame you're after. And then you can start doing all sorts of funky charts and writing Python. So if you're a Python fan, you can now do Python in Excel as well. You don't even have to load the data. I could do this. Let me see if this works just to finish off. I have got a, let's go data, queries and connections. Okay, so over here on the right, if it appears, I've got this Power Query, connection only, so it's not being loaded anywhere, connecting to another file or a database or whatever. Python can reference that, okay, without loading it. So I could go equals pi. Okay, let's call it dataflow PQ equals Excel. That's how you reference Excel objects. Open the bracket, and then exchange rate history. That's the name of the query. Control Enter. Now, yesterday it said I've used up all my premium Python speed. So you get a limited amount unless you pay for the Python license add-on. But, you know, it worked. There we go. So there's my Python data frame. Okay, and it's powered by Anaconda. Okay, and then I can go, I just want a preview of that. So let's go preview. So it's going off, running, executing that Power Query to run in the background, connection only. And then it'll just give me the top 5, bottom 5 records from that query. But I could do any analysis I wanted. There we go. There's 427 records in that exchange rate history. And that's
I will say that I appreciate the what I'm assuming the reason that all of this is even possible is that you know, Microsoft brought on the I forget his name, but the creator of Python. Like they hired him 5, 6 years ago. I don't actually even know what his role is, but I think you could agree there's a lot more Python integrations across the platform. It's a really, really good language. Like there's a, you know, it's one of the ones that if you're going to code, you need to learn Python. So like I thought it was a smart move, and like it makes a lot of sense in Excel. It kind of makes sense a little bit in Power BI, but Excel especially, I think Python has a lot of potential use cases for data analysis, consumption, extraction, etc.
Yeah, on the Excel ideas site, you know, way back, the Python one had about 5 times as many votes as the next nearest Python in Excel.
Is anything in there? Yeah, I could see that.
Now we think it was actually somebody executed some code to ramp up the votes, because not even that many people knew that the Excel sort of community existed in terms of the ideas site. So we're dubious about whether it really was that genuinely in demand, but it seemed to be. So, but yeah, so hopefully that gives an idea of some of the crazy stuff that's possible and in there. My last little shout out, if anybody is interested in my Excel course, I've got a little link here. I'll sort of share it.
Oh, please.
And that's, you can just pre-register, because I haven't actually released the Excel course yet. It's coming very soon. It's been coming very soon for a month, but we're almost there. It's done. Just have to get it up and running. So yeah, just pre-register. Might even chuck a discount in if you people would pre-register. So yeah, and this is the Access Analytic team. So shout out to those guys.
There you go. Wyn.bio.link one more time. And like that will have the link to this, right? And the training and everything you're mentioning. Or the
I haven't. Yep. That's a good point. I haven't actually put that in there, but I will straight away after this.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Let me bring back us to this here. No, this has been really useful. I actually learned a lot of new stuff just in terms of some of the functionality and other things. Because again, if you don't build stuff for clients, there's only so much playground you find time for yourself. And even if you do, playing with AdventureWorks is not the same as testing stuff in the real world with a lot of these. So it looks like you do a pretty good job of keeping your knife sharp, even though, as you've said, you don't do a ton of like client work in Excel. You still, I think, have a passion for wanting to just explore some of the cool functionalities that continuously gets available for it and evolves.
Yeah, because it's just, it's been a passion for, I've been playing with spreadsheets since, 25 years now, almost 30 years. So there's that inherent just, anything new is just quite a small incremental knowledge increase for me. Whereas like Fabric, everything was new. So I find Fabric, I've got colleagues in the team who are sort of more Fabric specialists, but I find Fabric, because there's so much so soon, it's very hard to then absorb a little bit at a time. It feels a bit overwhelming.
You almost have
So
to
with-
pick a product, right? Because like it would be like whole new operating system coming out or something. It's like either like pick a component of it. Yeah. But I was similar. Like, where do I look at data engineering? Do I look at a lake house or a warehouse or like all of these different things?
Yeah. And then they sort of strongly pushing the sort of the live, what's it called? Like Event Hub or streaming type analysis and stuff, which I feel like, it would be nice to know, but I don't have any clients. I've never had any clients that have asked for that, that capability to live report in Power BI or anything like that. So again, there's that piece. You go, okay, well, out of all the things I'd like to learn, and I'm getting a little bit better at Python notebooks and stuff, but only a little bit. Of all the stuff I want to learn, that's probably way down on the list. And then there's all these other tools, and then you chuck in all the AI tools on top of it that you just get jealous of seeing other people just doing cool stuff, and you go, oh, I want to have a play with that, and I want to have a play with that. So many distractions, right?
Well, especially now with AI, it's like it's so easy to start a passion project and then like 30 minutes turns into 3 hours or 5 hours, and it's like, do I actually need to, like, it's fun, but like I have other stuff I need to do, but that's a shiny toy that I want to go play with because it's new, and like I can do these things that I haven't been able to do before. But there's a lot of shiny toys now to chase after, either from Fabric directly, or any of the new features coming out for it, or just all the again all the things you can do with an LLM. So I think there's a lot of extra effort that needs to go into keeping yourself on track with these things.
Yeah, and the frustration as well is that the hype around it is just distracting from the fact that most companies are still 10 years behind where we are today. Microsoft seems to be, and other the AI folks are probably 3 or 4 years ahead of where we are, and there's this this big tail of there's people now slowly migrating their VBA Excel files to run on Power Automate or SharePoint and stuff. That's where people are at, and people are starting to learn Power Query and starting to learn about data cleansing, and it's just such a big slow tail to drag along.
Yep.
So there is a bit of your feeling of panic that Jesus, everything's changing and you can solve everything in Copilot and you don't need any expertise anymore. But it's not the reality, and it does get frustrating when potential clients or even old clients have rung me up and said, oh, this big complicated system that you built and spent 3 months building, can we make that easier just using AI? And it's just like, what does that even mean? What is that question? How do I even answer that? It's just like, no, it's not. AI isn't a product, or it can help you make stuff quicker potentially today, but it's not like a panacea that suddenly solves everything. It's just, but that's the selling message that's coming out. So yeah, frustrating.
Just as a little bit of a mention of that, it's just to wrap up. So there's a couple of little mentions that we had, given some context in like the community MVP on there's an article that came out that like was essentially like, oh yeah, like Power BI optimization can be replaced by Copilot. It is a tool, not a replacer, but I'll just mention that I guess this actually made like a local news site as a reference to that, of somebody from neowin.com. So look, like essentially internet news from an actual like tech news site talked about that article coming out on some of the ridiculous. It's funny how much of a wave this has made, or just anybody listening for a little bit of context. Somebody Microsoft who works at Microsoft, not speaking on the behalf of Microsoft, posted an article that essentially said that Copilot can replace Power BI optimization experts. That's just the long story short of it. Poorly phrased article that was just talking about Copilot fixing stuff in Power BI. But obviously there's a little bit of some ruffled feathers, I think, when something was that sensationalized on a few of these. Yeah. Microsoft does make some amazing tools, and Copilot, as when showed a few others, is really useful for a lot of things. But it's like with any tool, it's largely as good as the person who swings the hammer or uses the scalpel. And it's not as of yet a fully autonomous scalpel. It might help you with your hand movements, but it still needs to be guided a little bit. Maybe ask me this question again, in 2 to 3 years, and I might have a different answer. But for now, at least, you should never be like, it's like self-driving cars. We keep being told we're going to have self-driving cars next year, and it's been 10 years of promises like that. We've been told for a few years now AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, and like there have been layoffs related to it, but I think the actual brass tacks of it is, no job individually can fully be replaced by these things. It's just good leverage tools. Digressions aside, but go ahead.
Hopefully it doesn't go the way of, there's companies who knee-jerk reaction just offshored staff and did all online for everything, and then just discovered their customers left because of the service, and then they started hiring back again. And I guess we could have a scenario where people do either not hire or fire, and then a year down the line they realize, I'm not actually getting the value from all this AI that I was promised, and then start hiring again. But again, it's my
crystal ball. A little bit of this is the outside of anything related to like job markets and just the whole layoffs and firings, and like Seattle I think is actually leading in the country right now for 2026 for layoffs because of all the tech stuff for Amazon. But separate to that, just I think we're in a version 2.0 of like self-service, like whatever wave 2BI that Microsoft raised. Like we had the self-service where everybody started going and making reports and models and all that. Then you started hitting pricing issues with capacities and overpaying because things were unoptimized. I think in 2 to 3 years, I do think there's going to be a lot of platforms that are going to get built and are going to be really big and will work for a while and well enough. But at some point, something's going to happen where too much crisscrossing is going to happen because it's all being done somewhat half blind, letting the LLMs do this. And again, I think some architectural experts will need to come in. Back in the day, it was a Power BI expert fixing a model. I think that will eventually get solved. LLMs can be smart enough to fix like model by model to a degree, but I think like an architectural ecosystem and a data platform, I think that's where the next gen of like customers will shoot themselves in the foot eventually doing this automatically internally, which will work well enough for a while until it gets too complex, even for LLMs or something to orchestrate everything, because you have to have conversation with people, you have to talk to stakeholders, whatever goes into it. I think that's going to be where the next, like, we accidentally tangled the Christmas lights and we don't know how to undo it, and we need help on this. But I can see that as a crystal ball of the next gen of where will expert help be needed. I see a lot of it there.
Yeah, I can see that.
But things I could talk about for hours, but I do want to thank you for taking your time to go through a lot of the cool stuff in Excel. As I said, I've learned plenty of things, and I'm sure a lot of the people who continue to watch this will continue to learn for as well. Any final remarks, notes, links, little sage words of wisdom as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think my main thing is, just keep playing with all these tools. There's no substitute for actually hands-on and just playing around and just dipping in and just giving stuff a go, and try and set yourself, half an hour a week just to have a go at some of this stuff and have a play, and then it starts to sink in. Otherwise, it's just all a bit of noise. And also, there is no way that you can keep up, so don't feel bad.
I'll slightly tag that with they keep up with everything. If you pick and you specialize, you can keep up on a particular thing. But there's a chart that I saw of somebody that at one point where it was a bunch of like squares, and it was like 12 topics, and but you as a person only have 6 squares to fill. So you could fill up one of these all the way and become like the number one expert, or at least like the most you can be in that field. You can be, somewhat expert in 2, kind of expert, but you have only so much time to allocate. So pick where you put your time. But you cannot be an expert in all of them. So just, it's kind of where do you want to be? Jack of all trades, master of none, between the width of those, and what level you are. But like, it's a good thing to consider with that. But good bit of wisdom. And paired just with pick a lane. And I think that will help you have focus. Yeah. Cool.
All good.
I think with that being said, I'll give you the rest of your Friday morning. Thanks so much for this. And I'm
Pleasure.
sure we'll run into each other at some event sometime in the future.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right.
I appreciate it.
Take care and chat with you soon. Yeah.
Will do. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.